Okay.
Great.
Before we begin tonight, though, I do want to say a word about my dear friend, Richard Lindstrom. It was a terrible shock to me. I was a very good friend of Richard's, and we had spent a lot of time in Ecuador, Peru, and in Mexico on butterfly trips. And so it was very difficult for me to handle this, and I wasn't quite sure about even coming tonight. But I thought this is what Richard would want. Richard was so into butterflies that I knew that this would be what he would want. So I thought, okay, with that attitude of mine, it's great. But I want to share with you just one other thing before I start about Richard that some of you don't know. It was mentioned that he's been very generous, contributing to different kinds of funds. You couldn't find a more giving person than Richard. Not at all. I've never met anybody as giving as Richard. But you might not realize that down in Peru, at the National History Museum there, Richard had donated quite a sum of money to refurbish it. Richard and I were down there, and he was taking pictures of skippers from the museum, and we were really disappointed in how kind of run down the conditions were. A lot of the specimens were bad, and we noticed that it was humid. The air conditioning was just rotten. And so Dr. Lamas down there, Richard went up to him and says, "We've got to fix this." And I know that Richard talked to Dr. Lamas, and he had contributed funds to recondition that whole building. I believe it's all air conditioned now.
Yes.
And I think they didn't even build onto it, or they just completely redid it. They built on top of everything. I mean, this is what kind of man we're talking about. Plus, if any of you go down to Puerto Vallarta, please visit the Botanical Gardens, which is south of Puerto Vallarta, south of Mismaloya, because Richard contributed to Robert Price there, who is the owner, to make a butterfly garden. And they have put in a butterfly garden, and that is one way that we can remember Richard. So if you go down to Puerto Vallarta, take a little trip down to the Botanical Gardens. There is a dedicated garden to Richard, and plus a bunch of plaques put up for life cycles of butterflies and so forth. So this was a man that we're going to really miss, because he did so much for just not only us, but the butterfly world. He just was a fantastic person. Yes?
I know that, all those two trips that we went to down for anything, he spent a lot of money, and I don't know how much, but helping the kids support like soccer balls.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know what else, but
Yeah.
I know he did.
Well, I know one time down in Mismaloya, I had to laugh at Richard. He was disgusted with all the litter on the side of the road. And so he went into the little town and he recruited all the children. And he paid them. Remember that, Shirley? He paid them to go around the whole area of Mismaloya and pick up all the garbage. Now that's Richard. That's just the type of person he was. So these are the memories we have of him. Really positive, good memories of Richard. And we will miss him, that's for sure. All right, tonight we're going to, we're going to take you into an old-growth hemlock cedar forest above Lake Cushman. And this is the special place where this butterfly exists. It feeds on the dwarf mistletoe that grows in the old hemlock trees. And so you must go to this area to see this particular butterfly. I mean, it's in other places too. I think Dave said he's seen it up in Whatcom County, and I know it's in other places, but this is a place that's a sure bet to see this butterfly. And here it is, Johnson's Hair Street, named after a University of Washington professor. All respect to him, I'd rather rename it the Chocolate Hair Street, but that's not my prerogative. And the reason for that is because the upper sides of this are chocolate brown. The male is dark chocolate, if you like that. The female is milk chocolate. And so it is definitely chocolate colored, and it's immaculate. There's no markings on the dorsal surface. But the ventral surface is really easy to see. You notice this nice, let's see if I can find the arrow here. I think this is it. This really nice post-medium band, really bright white. and very brown. Notice also I want you to focus on this because there's another butterfly related to this that you might mix up if you're not careful. And that is this area here is brown. There is some scaling of gray or blue here, but basically this is brown. And this area, of course, is all brown. And this hair streak is large. The first time I saw this, I could not believe it. I said, what is this big brown butterfly? It's about 3 centimeters across. And it is, for a hair streak, it is really good size. So anyway, this is Johnson's. Now, the one you'll confuse with it, maybe, is this one. Now, if you look at the picture and say, well, wait a second, this is really different from the other one. Yes, it is. For one thing, you notice that the ground color here is much lighter. It's almost like a honey brown. It's not a dark brown at all. This is the cedar hair streak, and its larva, of course, feeds on the western red cedar, which is very common up there. So these two butterflies fly together because both of their food plants are right there. And right along this road you can find them. Either down on the flowers on the road itself, or muddying in the little ditches along the side of the road there if there's water. So you can find them. This one is much more abundant though. The cedar hair streak, it's more abundant and it's also smaller. It's about 2.3, maybe 2.5 centimeters across. So it's much smaller butterfly and much more common. The ratio probably 10 to 1, 15 to 1. 10 of these to every Johnson's that you find. Johnson is much rarer butterfly. Then also down this road you'll see some of our common butterflies as well. If you go up there, the western tiger swallowtail will be flying up and down this road. You will see that. You'll also see the pale swallowtail flying up and down the road. These are two of our real common swallowtail butterflies that will be flying. Now the best time to go up here, I would recommend, if you want to see the Johnson's hair streak, the very end of May, the very 1st of June. But be very careful about the Olympic Mountains. You have no idea how many times I've gone up there and been in the clouds. It might be a beautiful, sunny, clear day in Seattle, and you get all the way up here to Lake Cushman and it's cloudy. The Olympics, for some reason, just don't like to shed clouds. And so make sure you Google the weather very carefully and make sure that, look at Forks. If it's clear in Forks, you're going to be good. Okay? But the mountains there, they seem to kind of, those clouds seem to hang in there. But if you get a nice bright day, you'll be rewarded by seeing some of these really nice butterflies. Also, the little common checkered skipper has always been there. Every time I go, it's there. Usually it's flitting around close to the ground on the flowers. And so it's quite common up there as well. Also, you'll see blues up there. The echo blue is very common as well. You'll also see the cedar comma up there as well, and some other real common butterflies. So it isn't just those two hair streaks, but the Johnson hair streak was the reason I sent you up here, because that is the special bug for this area. Okay, now that's one trip, and that will take you probably about a half a day. But you can't go on to the second trip from there. So it's time to go home, and then pick another day to go on our second trip. And the second trip is going to be Mount Townsend Trail near Quilcene. This is one of the most beautiful hikes you can take in the state of Washington. And if none of you have been up there, or if some of you have been up there, you can agree with me that it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's near, you have to go to Quilcene, and from there you can take the road up. And the road is paved most of the way, so it's a wonderful, wonderful road to get up to the trailhead. But this is a full day, and I recommend if you do this, first of all, Google ahead, make sure that the weather's going to be clear. Because once again, you're dealing with the Eastern Olympics, and the Eastern Olympics are so fickle that you never know what's going to happen there. I was, in fact, I was in Hoodsport, which is right before of course, before I went north. It was totally clear in Hoodsport. By the time I got up to Quilcene and got up at the end of the trail here, it was cloudy. So you have to really be careful of the weather. But if you catch a really good day, this is a spectacular, absolutely spectacular hike. The last field trip I took with Wapa up there, it rained the whole time. But you know what? We had a great time. The wildflowers were beautiful, and we saw lots of wildflowers. Not a single butterfly, but we saw lots of wildflowers, and it was nice. And we hiked almost to the top in the rain. Now, is that dedication? You better believe it. Okay, so Mount Townsend, how do we get to this? Let's say you want to go here. Well, from Seattle, you probably take the ferry across, and Kingston, and then you want to go across the Hood Canal Bridge, and then you want to go down to Quilcene. You can take the shortcut down to Quilcene. From Quilcene, you go into the ranger station if you want, and get a map if you really need one, because it's pretty easy to get up here. But if you feel more secure, go into the ranger station. And then about a mile or so down the road is called the Penny Creek Road. And it's right before you get to the bridge. And Penny Creek Road, it's to the right, and you want to go up that road. Now that road is paved almost all the way. There are some areas that are gravel. I think they're in the process of repairing it, refinishing it. So some of it is gravel, but most of it is paved all the way. So it's a great road, and you can go way up into the Olympic Center. It's just wonderful. And also, there's a lot of neat butterflies along that road. If you park your car, you would be amazed at what you can, especially in the fall. I was up there in September, and I couldn't believe all the nymphalids that were out fresh. You know, they had hatched out in September, and they were all along the road there. So it can be really good there as well. But go early. If you're going to make it all the way to the top and you want to really do this justice, what I'm going to show you, I would suggest that you're at the trailhead by 8 o'clock in the morning. So that means an early rise here. But if you're not going to do that, you're going to miss, because you're not going to see everything. It's a good hike, but you should get there early. By 8 o'clock would be great, and that would be a good start. Okay, and this is in the National Forest. Now, the reason I like that particularly is they're not so fussy about you taking a net. I know some of you people don't use nets. I do, because I like to ID things, and I like to make sure what I'm catching. And the National Park kind of frowns on you having a net, but the National Forest is no problem. In fact, I talked to a lot of forest people up there, and they're asking what I was doing and looking, and they got all excited about what I was doing. So they were just fine with it. Also, you can get off trail. And it's not a really good idea to tromp around all the wildflowers, but you can get off trail if you need to see something, whereas in the National Park, they're really fussy about that. So that's some of the advantages of going here. Plus, I think you see more of the butterflies at one time in this area than you would like up at Hurricane Ridge. Here's the Mount Townsend Trail. Now, what you want to do is go to the second trail. If you're going to do this road, there's going to be a sign that says Mount Townsend Trail, the first cutoff. Don't just skip that. Keep going, because it's going to take you another mile up through the woods from there to get to this trail. And if you like woods, and if you like the extra hike, fine, go ahead and do it. But it's an extra mile that you don't need to do, because you're going to see the same woods here up to the first meadows. So you can start, your trailhead is at 4,030 feet. So you can see, you can drive right up to this. You drive up to 4,030 feet. That's pretty good. It takes a lot of climbing out to start with. Now, this is kind of the lay of the land of the trail. The trail is excellent. It is just an outstanding trail, manicured. But there's one problem. It's a steady uphill. And the way I always enjoy it is I take in all of the wildflowers on the way. So that way I can pace myself, take it cool, take it easy, get lots of stops, and it works out fine for me. If you're a real avid hiker and want to get from point A to point B, you can just march right up this. But it's a pretty steady uphill through forest. But it's beautiful. There's wildflowers along the trail, and you're going through an old growth forest. So it's absolutely fantastic. So this is kind of what the trail looks like for the first part of the hike. Unfortunately, I didn't get this in bloom when I was there, but the Pacific rhododendron, our Washington State plant, grows here, and it's it's everywhere there. So one thing nice about the Olympic Peninsula is that's where we find so much of this plant, our state plant. When it is in bloom, the flowers are kind of a pinkish lavender color. Yes?
Do you know the bloom time?
The bloom time for that is usually May.
May?
Yeah. Now up this high, it'd probably be late May. I'm thinking more, you know, I have one of these native plants in my yard. And mine always comes out in May. And so I have this species. But I would say up that high, I would, probably extend it a couple weeks, maybe towards the end of May, maybe even early in June. Yes. But if you go up early in June, you're going to run into snow up further. So yeah, you'll see flowers here, but you're going to not get the benefit. The time to go up to Mount Townsend to do this trail would be, it depends on the year, because this is a high snow year. So I don't know this year, but I would say anywhere from mid-July through August. And it might be late July. It just depends on the snow. You have to kind of check on that. Calling the ranger station at Quilcene would give you that information. They would tell you whether it's snowed in at the top or whatever, and they would definitely give you the information on that. Yeah.
One of the things I do is I check the Washington Trails Association website, check for trip reports, because this is a really popular trail, so there will be trip reports, and they'll say how much snow was on the trail when they were there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned how popular this is. This is not a secret trail. You usually go up there and you run into many, many people and their dogs. They take their dogs up there, the kids, the whole works. They're up here. And so it's a wonderful hike. It's just a wonderful hike. But it's a steady uphill, so you have to be in pretty good shape to do this unless you just take it really cool. And if you do that, you start even earlier. Make sure you can get up there. Now, so along the trail here, now this is along the wooded area. You'll see some nice plants, and the steward's going to help me out whenever. I identified all these plants from the slides, and so sometimes it's easy to make a mistake, and so if I've made any, then Seward will help correctly. He's our in-house botanist.
The tiarella, I don't know what cordifolia is, but trifoliatum, tiarella trifoliatum would be the name that I know for foam flowers.
Okay, this might be an older name for the species name.
I think it's East Coast.
Is it? Oh, it could be. Okay, that could be. So, so you guys can help me out. That's great. The star flower, the whirl of leaves around it with a nice little white flower, and then the foam flower all along the trail. You'll see this with the heads nodding. And the Indian pipe that you'll see along the trail periodically, I ran into this, plus orchids. But the Indian pipe, as you notice, does not have chlorophyll. So if it's right, Stuart, they get from the organic material in the soil. Is that where they get most of the nutrients?
I'm thinking that they're actually getting it from fungi.
Yeah.
I think we used to think that they were just decomposing things on their own somehow, and it's not as clear as I'd like it to be, but I think these are somehow getting it from fungus, whether it's parasitic on the fungus.
No, mycorrhizal association.
Like a kind of mycorrhizal fungus.
Yeah.
But are they giving anything back to the fungus?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I don't know if there's any evidence of.
I think this is a good question. But anyway, the plant is not green, so it's obviously getting its nutrition from the soil somehow. Oh, more of the hike. So you can see, you notice this, it's still going uphill. You noticed?
Or downhill.
Yeah, we're downhill. It's fun going back. You can almost run down. It's going up, it's so hard. But all along the side, you run into in the plants. This is the rattlesnake orchid. And if you haven't ever seen that, or it's called rattlesnake planting. I think there's a number of different common names for this
And
thing.
again, the scientific name you have up there is not the one I
It's not correct? Okay.
Goodyear oblongifolia.
Okay. Okay, the species name then is incorrect. Okay.
And you've got a nice shot adjacent to that in the brighter green of a pink pyrola. That's Pyrola serifolia.
Yeah, the pyrola's
Something you
there.
don't see a lot of.
And the Oregon grape. So, yeah. But anyway, this is kind of interesting. And rattlesnake gets its name from the leaves that look like almost like a snake skin. An idea. And the little wild rose, which you'll find there, a little forest rose, a little delicate little pink one that we have. And also the vanilla leaf. Now, I have an interesting story about the vanilla leaf. I used to teach environmental biology in high school, and I would take my kids on field trips, and I tried to get them to identify as many common plants as they could, plus animals, whatever. And the kids had a terrible time remembering this plant, vanilla. They could not associate with it. And I said, well, now take a look at it. I said, look at the leaves. They look like an elephant's ear. I said, now doesn't this look like an elephant? And they said, yeah, it does. It looks just like an elephant. Well, that was my big mistake, because you know in the next field trip what they were calling it, right? Mm-hmm. They called it elephant ear. Didn't do any good. Okay, and as we meander up through this forest, we cross a creek here, And the reason I took this is to show that there are plenty of little seepage areas, creeks along the trail, and plus the mosses. If any of you are into mosses, this would be a great place. I believe over there I even saw some liverworts in there. So there are a number of species of mosses that would be interesting to some people. And this guy, the slime mold. Everyone seen slime molds before? Has anybody touched a slime mold? What do they feel like? What?
Not slimy.
Well, I got a story to tell about that. When I was taking systematic botany at Western Washington University, it was mandated that we make plant collections. In those days, today I think collections out, isn't it, David? They don't do collections anymore. But when I was taking college classes, we had to make collections of all kinds of things. Anyway,
For college classes?
Yeah.
Oh, they still require collections.
Pardon?
They still require
Oh,
collections.
they do, okay. So anyway, the professor was by me and Dr. Taylor, and I says, oh gosh, that's a slime mold. I said, can I use this? And he had kind of a smile on his face. And he said, sure, you can use it. So I had a baggie with me. Do I need to go any further with this? I put it in a baggie and put it in my backpack. Do you know what this thing looked like when I got back? Okay. Anyway, these things move.
Yeah.
They move. They move from place to place. And one field trip, we were up in the, with my environmental class again, we took a hike and we saw one and we marked it. We marked where it was because we were on about a 4-hour hike. And we hiked up and came back and we had seen that it had moved. We had made a line there and it had moved. So, because they didn't believe it. They said, oh, that thing doesn't move. They actually do. They float. They move. Okay, this is a cute little lily, Queen's Cup lily. And you'll see this along the trail. And this is in the forest now. We're talking still in the forest area. And pretty soon we're going to open up into a totally different ecosystem. And the coral fungus. Coral fungus kind of reminds you of coral. And that grows along the road. And then the bunchberry dogwood. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this or not. This is an herbaceous plant. This is a tiny little thing. Now, it looks exactly like the tree. Exactly like the Pacific dogwood in every detail except size. And it's herbaceous. It's only about 6 inches to a foot high. Whereas, of course, the trees, dogwood, Pacific dogwood is a large tree. Now, we break out of the forest. We've been right up that trail forever, and then we get into this beautiful subalpine meadow. Just flowers everywhere. And the trail now will switch back through this about 3 times. So all along this trail, there'll be butterflies on these flowers, on the leaves, everywhere. Now this is about 2.7 miles, so you've gone that far. Now some people might say, that's enough, I've had enough hiking, and they might want to just spend the rest of their time here, which is pretty rewarding because there's lots of different butterflies in here. It's a good spot, but I still think you should make it to the top for a number of reasons, which I'll go on later. Anyway, let's take a look at this area. Here's the switch, you can see the trail and switch back there coming through. And there are a number of plants. We're not going to spend time going through that, otherwise I'll never get through my program tonight. But there are many species of plants there. I've just documented a few of them here. The thimbleberry, which you will see in this meadow. And notice that that was not down below. I did not see that in the forest. It might grow there, but I didn't see it. But it's in this open meadow. It's pretty common. The clumbley lily, gorgeous thing. That is also in this meadow, numerous. And our first butterfly, the Clodius parnassian. The Clodius parnassian, there's going to be 2 parnassians we're going to see on this trip. Now, this is the lower one. This is the one that flies at a lower elevation. So it'll be in these meadows, almost exclusively. That's where you're going to see it. And I'll show you, by looking at the dorsal surface, I want you to just take note of some characteristics here, so we'll be able to separate it from the one we're going to see on the top of the mountain. Notice that the antennae are going to be solid black. Okay, they're solid black. That's one thing. Secondly, look at this huge area of no scales. This is just membranous wing. No scales at all. So the bite is much more limited. Also notice there is no red, even a hint of red, in this area and here. Now keep those in mind, and that'll help you discover the difference between the Clodius Parnassium and the Parnassium we're going to see on top, which is the non-Parnassium. And Sarah's orange tip, and this is the thing that's interesting about Townsend. Sarah's orange tip. Now this photo was probably taken in mid-July. Now when does Sarah's orange tip fly?
Early spring.
Now, April, okay? It's April flying, but that's down here. That's not in the mountains. When you're in the mountains, you've got all of your seasons compressed into a very short period of time. Your spring, summer, and fall are all basically 2.5 to 3 months at most. So everything has to come out at one time. So you might see a Sarah's orange tip, and right next to it would be a fresh red apple, which generally down here comes out in, what, August or July, late July, August. So they fly together, and that's what you see up there. So all the seasons are kind of compressed together. There's the male, Sarah's orange tip, and then there's the female. I hope I didn't go too fast there. I know a lot of you people know these butterflies, and so I don't like to dwell too much, but for those that don't, the male, if you look at the male, you notice that the orange is almost at the very tip end. It's very solid orange, the male. The female, on the other hand, the orange is restricted to a smaller band, and also oftentimes will be very yellow here. That's very common in the female. So there's the Sarah's orange tip, and that'll be up there. You'll see it if you're up there in July and August. You'll see this butterfly flying in these meadows. Aha! When I looked at this, I said, fritillary food. We got violets up here. This is the round leaf yellow violet. I assume that's all right?
I'm not so sure. It looks like the Glabella, the yellow
That's
violet.
what I was thinking about. But the leaves were so round that I thought, no. I don't know. You might be right.
I think also the flower is on a stalk, a branched stalk. It's hard for me to explain, but pretty sure this is Viola glabella yellow stream violet.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of undecided on it. And this one, I didn't even attempt because I didn't take a specimen back. I'm just calling it lupin. But this lupin, this particular kind of lupin is really common in these meadows. And of course, these are the blues. These are the blues larval food plants. So we'll see some blues there. Yeah, and there's a vetch down here too.
I think that's Vicia americana.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't photograph all of them here because the whole program would be wildflowers because there's so many of them. But if you want to see them yourself, you go up there. Believe me, you can enjoy yourself with all the wildflowers there. There's just plenty of them. The Mariposa copper is up here, and so that's pretty common. You'll find that real commonly in these meadows. There's the male. The male is brown on top, but the female has a sexual dimorphism and has a lot of red in it, and so, or orange, and so they are really quite different looking, but they're still, the ventral surfaces are the same, so you could identify them by the ventral surface. Then, once again, we saw the lupin all over, so we knew there's going to be blues, and so here's the silvery blue. Now those of you who have trouble with the blues, the silvery blue is pretty easy. I think most of you know that, because on our trips we've pointed it out many times, but you have these spots here making a pretty straight line all the way down. And notice the margin is immaculate. A lot of the blues have markings here, all different kinds of marginal markings. But the silvery blue doesn't. It just has this nice row of nice spots all the way down, and it's pretty immaculate. There's a few spots here, but that's how you know it. And plus, of course, when you see the dorsal surface, you see how silvery it is. It's not, some blues are very dark blue. This is very silvery blue. So it's well named. It's a good common name.
Were they nectaring on those, I believe, penstemons, or were they just perching?
His perching. This was just perching. Some of them, it was a very nice day, and it was in the morning. Remember, I started out really early on this trip, and so a lot of the butterflies were out just kind of sitting, and which made it nice. Oh, and of course the asters. And don't even begin to ask me the species of this. But there are many different asters that are in this area that you will see, and plus the penstemon, which is here. So, yeah, oh, and also, yeah, I have another picture of these later, but seed them too. In there. So like I said, we could make a whole talk tonight just on the wildflowers of this meadow. But we got other things to see and do. Another violet, oh, fritillaries. Okay, another violet. Is this correct, the dog violet? Is that
It is violet. I can't say I'm sure from this without seeing the pouch.
Yeah.
And even then, I'm not sure I'd get it for certain. I'm
Yeah.
guessing a Dunkop, but I'm not certain.
Yeah. And the other blue we're going to see up here is waterlouse blue. And this is an interesting blue because the subspecies of this is black moraine. And this does not fly in eastern Washington. We've been on a lot of trips in eastern Washington. We've seen waterlouse blue, lots of them over there. That's a different subspecies than this. Black moraine is actually called the Puget blue. This blue is found in our Puget areas, like down by Fort Lewis and McCord and that area down there, all the way down to Tenino in June. It's a good time to see that. But it also flies up into the Olympic Mountains. So this is another place to see it. But if you want to see it locally, you can go to Johnston's Prairie in June, and you'll see this butterfly right there in Fort Lewis. Oh, I got to go back. Does everybody understand why it's a waterlouse blue? Now, I know so many people are new, and you'll say, how do I know what this is? You see, this is not a very good shot of the ventral, but you see these spots here? These are ringed. There's a black dot, but they're ringed in white. See that? That's usually kind of a telltale way to see the waterlouse blue. Usually they're ringed with white around it. So that's one good way. And also the blue is more blue. You notice it's not silvery like the other. And our first fritillary. This is another interesting fritillary because this is also in the Puget Prairies. This is around Fort Lewis as well, but you're going to see this in August and September down in Fort Lewis. But you can actually see this up in the Olympics in July and August up there. And this is the Zerani fritillary. Very dark colors. You can see it's a gorgeous thing from the ventral side.
Sitka Valerian?
Dark colors it has. Pardon?
Is that out of a Sitka Valerian?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm just not sure what that is. Here's the female of this butterfly. It's going to show the dorsal surface of it. And these are pretty large. These fritillaries are, of course, greater fritillaries, so they're pretty good sized wingspan. Then we also find in this meadow the Beloria, which are the smaller, the lesser fritillaries. And this is the western meadow fritillary. And how you can recognize this is, especially with a freshman, look at this nice lavender marginal edge here. Very nice, large lavender edge. That's very characteristic of this butterfly. When it's fresh, and if it's been out a while, then that kind of fades away. And we'll see the dorsal surface of that. The western meadow fritillary. And the glacier lilies are here, and of course, I didn't see any other glacier lilies, but they're very similar to this, except white. But this glacier lily was here, in different places. And another butterfly, this is a crescent. Now this is the dark crescent. This is our very darkest of all of our crescents. It has so much black in it that it's pretty easy to identify. Plus, it's the one that usually flies in mountain meadows. This is what you're usually going to find when you get up into the mountains. It's a field crescent. This is the male, which has a lot of black on it. The female is quite different. It's got more orange on it. This one could be a little bit older too, is because the black is much more faded, but you can see that the orange is a lot more extensive, and it's a little bit larger. Another rhododendron, the white rhododendron, which is along the trail there. And then Edith's checker spots. Now, can someone review for me how we know that's an Edith's checker spot from the ventral surface? Anybody want to take a stab at it? We know. Go ahead.
Well, there's, okay, look at the hind wing, and you can see a row of dark and white, and then a line, and then there's orange, and then a line, and then more orange.
That's right.
Now, some of the others, especially down there, other checker spots, that's called the Edith line. That,
Yeah.
well, it's really done a little semicircular. There's semicircular. There's orange on both sides of that period.
See that line there, that dark line? There's orange on both sides.
The other checker
And-
spots don't have it, they maybe just don't.
And it works great for our state. I understand in other parts of the country, it doesn't
It doesn't
hold.
work. Uh-huh.
But it does for our state. All the Edith checker spots in our state all have that double red area. So that's something to keep in mind. It's this area right in here. Also, there's another way too that I don't know, maybe it's just because I've dealt with them so often. I find that the red bands on these are so organized on the Edith checker. This is a male now, and you see how these red bands are just all organized and complete all the way through, and the bands seem to be just put in the right spot. In other words, they're just placed where they should be. Here's the female. You can even see that better. See how all of these spots go together, and they seem to form a nice pattern here. This is very typical of the Edith checker spot. And this subspecies is Colonia, which flies in the Olympics, and it also flies in the Cascades. So you can see it up there as well. You can find this up at Mount Rainier.
Dare I ask how you know it's Colonian?
Pardon?
Dare I ask how you know it's Colonian?
Well, because it's the only recorded species of Editha that has been found in western Washington. So if it's not Colonia, we don't know what it is.
What about Taylor
You know, you're asking a good question there, and I have to spend a second on this. Ann Potter called me 2 summers ago and said, how about going up to Mount Townsend and collecting me some specimens of Colonia? And I said, sure, I'll do that, Ann. So she sent me a bunch of folders, and I said, yeah, I'll go up there. Well, I went up there, and I went 3 times up there, and I didn't see one. It was just one of those things. It was a fluke thing, because this butterfly is not uncommon. I didn't see one, so I had none for her, and I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I zeroed out. I spent 3 different days up here, I didn't have any, and I didn't go up this last year. I think she was afraid to ask me after my disappointment. But her purpose was they wanted to do DNA study with this to see whether it is really Taylor. So, good question.
So I did
But for now,
a
we
survey
call it
for her.
Colonia. What's that?
I did a survey for her in an area with presumably a lot of Taylori.
Uh-huh.
I can't say I remember how I would have distinguished them,
I think it'd be very difficult.
and I can't say I know that they were ever identified correctly.
Yeah, I would say it'd be very difficult. So that's a good academic question that needs to be solved through DNA studies. Okay, let's move on. Quickly, we're going to move up to the mountaintop, Green Falls Hellebore, and we're seeing the Horikama, which is up here. There's lots of food plant for it along the way. This is the ventral surface, the male dorsal surface of this. Marsh marigold, I'm not sure about this either. I really debated with this. I wasn't positive. It looks like ranunculus, but I'm not sure. But anyway, that can be debated. California tortoiseshell, some years this is very abundant up there, and some years it's very rare. Last year I didn't see any. This was taken from past years. In fact, one year it was so abundant that when I was up there, I was sweating so bad that I have California tortoiseshells landing on me and getting the salt from my skin. That's how abundant they were. They were just everywhere. So this butterfly is strange. It sometimes is large, sometimes you don't see it at all. Red Admiral. And this is another special butterfly up here, the Vidler's alpine, which is found in the Olympics and also in the North Cascades, and it gets partway into the Ohio Okanagan as well. But it's an interesting one. It's different from our common alpine because of this nice big gray spot here that it has, or bluish scaling. And also, if you look at the dorsal surface, you'll notice that down here, this band kind of unifies. This orange band comes all together. In the common alpine, those are individual spots. Those are definite individual spots. So they're totally different looking when you compare the two together. But this is our Olympic alpine, Now, we're getting towards the top. We got out of those meadows finally, and we're walking our way up here, and we're looking now, and now we're starting to see the Olympic Mountains at the top, seeing the beautiful snow. This is the scenery you're going to see. And whoop, we're running into new plants. Now we find new plants. Phacelia, also more and more asters of different kinds. And we get our first view of Mount Rainier from the top of the Townsend Trail. And sorry, it wasn't a really clear day. I've seen it so clear that I could see the Space Needle in Seattle. But this particular day, you could see there was some haze there. There's Mount Rainier. But you just take a little look over, and you see Mount Baker. And this is all from the trail. This is some of the scenery you'll see. And Glacier Peak. So you can see along the whole Cascades. One day I was up there, it was so clear I could see all the way down to Mount St. Helens and all the way up. And I went to the other end of Mount Townsend, and I could see the Salmon Islands. So it's very beautiful at the top. Now, here we're at the top now. We made it. 3.2 miles from the trailhead. 6,278 feet high. That's where you are. That's where you climb. Okay? And now look at the views. Now you're looking into the west, and look at how beautiful those Olympic Mountains are. With all the snowfields. Just gorgeous. This is the top of Mount Town. This is the peak, which is 6,278 feet. And it's really interesting. I know it's the peak because our hilltoppers are there. All of you know what hilltoppers are, don't you? They're special butterflies that like to find the very highest place to be. And that's where they'll be. And there's two of them here, and I'll show you because I went right up there, and sure enough, both of them were there. I expected to see them, and they were there. But that area is full of meadows and grass and everything, and this is an interesting plant. Now, this is on top. So see, the vegetation changes now. We got a totally different ecosystem up here. This is cushion buckwheat, and this plant is the only plant that this special butterfly up here feeds on. This is the lupin blue, but this is a subspecies that is not found in eastern Washington. This is only found in the Olympics. And this is the male. And there underneath you can see the beautiful scales that it has here. And here's the female. And it feeds on that food plant. It's the only place to get. So this, you'll only find this butterfly up in the Olympics. And of course, once we see this, we know what else we're going to see. Once we see sedum, we're going to see this. Now, there's your mountain Parnassian. Now, remember I told you to remember about the other Parnassian? What did I tell you to remember? The antenna. Can you see the little stripes on here? You will in the next picture. This one isn't as good. That's striped. The other one was solid. Notice a hint of orange. Red up here. See the hint? Well, you'll see it better in the females. The male doesn't display it as well. Notice that this area of just membrane is very restricted now. It's almost all white scaling. And, of course, this butterfly flies on top. And it's a very fast flyer. There's the female. Now you can see the characteristics better. Red. Look at the striped antennae. Okay. Isn't this a gorgeous butterfly? This is our mountain Parnassian. Sometimes we just call it the Olympian Parnassian because of its subspecies name, Olympianus. This only flies in the Olympic Mountains, this particular butterfly.
Is it not the ones that fly in the Cascades, it's a different subspecies?
Yeah, it's a different subspecies. This one only flies in the Olympics. Oh, and also we see lomatium, and that means there's another butterfly up here. And guess what? It's our hilltopper. Are you surprised? Yeah?
What relation was that?
Oh, let's go back. Did I even identify it?
You listed as Martindale. I don't disagree.
You don't disagree?
I don't disagree. And looking at the leaves,
I got one right.
I'm seeing that blush, the glaucous look, and the size tells me pretty sure it's Martindale, as you said.
Thank you, Stuart. It makes me feel better. But anyway, this is a hilltopper. You go right to the very top of Townsend, I'll guarantee you. You get up there, it's a sunny day, you'll see it. It'll be there. It's there all the time. Every time I've been up there, it's been there. and the Anna Swallowtail. And the other hilltopper is the western pike. It'll be up there too. You'll see a white butterfly flying all around, just around the very top of it. That's it. That's the western pike. And there's the ventral surface of it. A plant I didn't even attempt to identify. Sorry. I have no clue. But this is up on top.
I identify by the leaves,
But they're probably basil.
and I don't recognize it.
Yeah, I don't either. I didn't know. I couldn't identify. The Arctic blue. Now this is another place to find it. This is another special blue that flies in our high mountains. You'll find it in the Olympics, and you'll also find it in the North Cascades. And it gets, I think, into the Okanagan partway. These parts of the Okanagan will have this too. Beautiful blue. Look at how it has. You might say, oh, it's a volleyball blue. It does have ringed spots, but look at this ground color. It's brown. It's brown. It's not a typical blue. And look at the dorsal surface. This is the male. It has blue scaling, but not a lot. It's really quite a dark butterfly. And the female is even darker yet. It's all brown. So this is that. Cinquefoil. People look at this and say, oh, look at the cluster of buttercups. Well, not so fast. And different family. But anyway, it's an interesting plant. And it flies, or it grows up here in this area. This is the peak now, Townsend. So there's lots of wildflowers. Scarlet paintbrush. And you've got your bluebells of Scotland.
That is probably specific to the Olympics too. There's a particular.
This particular one,
Is a Olympics.
I'm not surprised. And this is quite abundant up there.
Specific race or something?
I don't know, but this particular one, I think is specific. Only grows.
The species is wider spread.
Now, here's another checker spot. Now, this one, notice, isn't the Edis. This is a snowberry. And I want you to look once again for our Edis mark. Do we have that here? Do we have red on red?
No, but white on white.
Oh, we have white on white, but we don't have red on red. And so this is the other, basically, this is the snowberry checker spot here.
This used to be called.
Pardon?
What's the former name?
Oh, it used to be called, instead of, no, I think it's been called,
This would be Chalcedon.
the Chalcedon.
You can't get this.
Because it used to be called Chalcedon, and now it's been changed to cold. But it was Chalcedon. Now, another thing is look at the dorsal surface of this one compared to the other one we showed. The Edis, remember how much red was on it and how organized the red spots are? Look at this thing, it's almost all black. So it's much darker butterfly. The Melrose tortoise we'll see on top as well. He'll be flitting around up there. And also the Hydaspi fritillaria, another fritillaria that's very common. I want you to show you this subspecies, Rhodope, which flies in western part of our state. Notice here, notice that this brown color goes all the way through. There's no band here. When you get into eastern Washington, the other subspecies that you have there will have a nice band here of a different color. And so it's pretty easy to tell these apart. Rhodope is usually pretty solid all the way through. And this flies once again in the Olympics. Then the Arctic fritillary, which also flies in the Cascades. It's named Rainier Eye because you can get it at Mount Rainier, and it's really checkered. It's different in that it's got such a checkered ventral wing there, and that's the dorsal wing of it. And we're down to the last few slides here. This is the Crixus arctic. This is also found only in the Olympics. This subspecies is found only in the Olympics. This is the ventral surface of it. Here's the male, and here is the female. Now these are pretty large butterflies. They're grass feeders, so they're going to be in the grassy areas. You're up on the grass, you'll see them. Then the western sulfur, that's our only sulfur that flies in the Olympics. And, oops. There's the dorsal surface of that butterfly. Then some skippers. And this is dedicated to Richard. We're going to have some skippers that we can have for him to see. And this is the common banded skipper. The banded skipper is our high mountain skippers. We have subspecies in eastern Washington and one in western Washington. This is our western Washington one. healthy. And this you'll have better luck seeing if you go later in the summer. You may not see it if you're there in July. It may be August or even into September before this shows up. It's a later flying skipper. There's the ventral surface. Notice the white area here. The spots, white or silver spots here. And we'll compare it to the other skipper. There's two skippers that fly up there. The other one is this one, woodland skipper. Oh boy, that's really a rare one, isn't it? That's in your yard. You just go out in your yard and you'll see this in the fall. And it also flies with it. But if you notice the coloration here, these are very pale spots here. So it's very easy to tell from the random skipper. And there's the dorsal surface of that. And we'll end with spreading phlox. Beautiful plant that we'll see along at the top.
See much nectar.
And look at this thing. Isn't this a gorgeous thing?
That's the one I was thinking of.
Oh, you're thinking of this one, the bellflower. One flower. It has one little flower. And it's pretty small. I had to get pretty close to get this shot. Isn't that a gorgeous thing? And I don't know, is that the only place it's found?
That's the one I'm thinking of in my
Okay,
books, but I
good.
usually see it.
It's just a gorgeous flower.
Yeah.
But this is right on top. This is on top of Townsend now. You'll find this.
What is it?
Campanula.
Campanula piperite.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
piperite
it's
is
Olympic-
what makes it.
The Olympic bellflower.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
It's just a gorgeous, but it's tiny. It's a tiny little thing, but it's just gorgeous. Single flower. Yeah. Any questions?
Wow.
No. Everyone wants to go home.
We want to go now.
Oh, you want to go now? Yeah.
When's your next trip?
Yeah, I know.
Our,
I go at least once a year. Yeah.
the reason for the sort of separate subspecies in the Olympics from the rest of the state, due to glaciation 15
I think
years ago?
it's been isolated for such a long period of time that it's an interbreeding population and it's just now distinct. Other than that, I don't know. I haven't really gone into the records to find out why this particular differences, but those that have classified as such have said that it's an isolated thing. The Olympic Mountains are a very isolated area, and you know it's really difficult to get from there to eastern Washington. So, but there are some butterflies that span it, like the Vitter's alpine. It's in the Olympics, but it also gets into the North Cascades. So somehow it's made its extension through the north part of the Cascades as well. So it's strange, but this one pretty much stays. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How much difference does it have to be, how much different, to be considered a different species?
This is a problem. Oh, are you opening Pandora's box? There are what we call lumpers and splitters in the biology world. Now, there are some people who would like to do away with all subspecies and say, forget it, call it a species, and be happy. Just say it's a different form of the species, and they may be right. But a lot of entomologists like to be specific. And so they make these subspecies names. Now, since they're a subspecies, they can technically interbreed. It's only supposed to be species that can't interbreed. But subspecies can't. So imagine you could take a mountain Parnassian from, let's say, eastern Washington, and you could mate it with an Olympic Parnassian. Supposedly. I don't know if everyone's ever tried it, it's been done, but supposedly it can be done. But yeah, you've opened a really good question, and it's been debated by, I know when I was in biology, it was debated by every professor I had about subspecies. They said, what do we do with it? You know, and a lot of times subspecies are for convenience. You know, if you've got an isolated population somewhere, and it looks at least so isolated, it doesn't look like you have a connection physically with another population, we'll call it a subspecies. So a lot of times it's that, it's just that. Other times they have really good reason. I mean, they have specific differences in them. Like that lupin blue that I showed you up there, if you look at a specimen from eastern Washington and one from up here in the Olympics, they are different. They are different looking butterflies, even though they have a lot of the same characteristics. So you can justify that one a lot better than you can some of the others. So I think it really varies species by species, but very, very good question. And a very hard one to answer. Other questions? How many want to go on the hike? It's a beautiful place to hike. You guys gotta go on it. Yeah.